Do you remember what Christmas was like when you were a kid? Yeah, can you kind of roll back the time a little bit? For some of us, it's a little bit further back than others, but give it your best shot. You know, my dad was a pastor, and so we would spend the better part of Christmas Eve at church. But I loved it. I really did. I enjoyed it. There would be a service at like 5 or 6 o'clock in the evening, and then there would be kind of a gap, and then another one around 11 o'clock that would finish up just after midnight. And so we wouldn't be going home until like close to 1 in the morning. And we were absolutely dead tired, but I mean, the adrenaline was flowing because I knew it wouldn't be long before Santa would show up and deliver the goods. Are you with me? Yeah, somebody once said that life consists of 3 stages. In the first stage, we visit Santa Claus. In stage 2, we discover we are Santa Claus. And then in the final stage, we begin to look like Santa Claus. I hate to break the news to you. But my brother Dave, some of you might know him, he's around here occasionally. We shared a bedroom growing up as kids. My sister, being the youngest of the 3, of course, had her own bedroom. But we would all hit the sack, pretty quick once we got home from church. And then, we would wait, quietly listening to any sound that would indicate that presents were being placed under the tree. Maybe you can relate, the sound of plastic shopping bags rustling, doors opening and closing, right? Lights being switched on and off, steps being taken up and down the stairs, right? And I could never quite understand how Santa seemed to be able to leave those gifts under the tree the very moment my mom and dad went to sleep. It's amazing how he was able to do that. But as soon as we were certain that mom and dad were finally in bed, we would begin to quietly kind of tiptoe down the stairs to see what Santa left for us. And it was so much fun, the anticipation, the excitement, the wonder. I mean, it was great. It was so fun. That is until the year Santa left my brother Dave and me boxing gloves. I ended up with a bloody nose on Christmas Eve. You should have seen Dave. I mean, what sort of diabolical Santa would leave boxing gloves for brothers on Christmas? I mean, that's awful, isn't it? And so after years of therapy, I have once again begun to love this time of year. But I gotta tell you, as much as I love it, I have to admit, I don't necessarily have that same sense of wonder I had as a child. And I kind of wonder, why not? Why not? It's kind of like the first time you go to a place like Niagara Falls. How many of you have been to Niagara Falls? Okay, quite a few of you have been there, right? And I remember going there when I was a kid, and I was absolutely blown away. I mean, the falls seemed so massive, right? Bigger than life, right? And the stories of people going over the falls in a barrel or walking across the falls on a tightrope. I mean, those stories just captivated me. But I've been back a couple times as an adult, and it's still incredible, but for some reason, it just doesn't provoke the same wonder it did when I was a child. And so I wonder, why not? I mean, could it be that, life's disappointments kind of move us away from wonder and towards cynicism? Or maybe our addiction to hurry and the fast pace of life kind of causes us to neglect this part of life, and we don't let ourselves slow down enough to get lost in wonder like we once did. Or is it possible that we just sort of think that, we dismiss wonder as sort of childish, something that we grow out of? And so I wonder, why don't we wonder? It makes me think of something G.K. Chesterton once said. He said, the world will never lack for wonders, but only for a lack of wonder. Think about that. The world will never lack for wonders, but for only a lack of wonder. And so I tell you, our hope is that this Christmas, that you won't lack for wonder. Because, pretty much everything about the Christmas story is a wonder. I mean, after all, we're celebrating the moment when the God of the universe broke through into time and space to become one of us. And how he came, it was so unpredictable. He came in the most helpless and unassuming way one could imagine. A newborn baby, not even a baby born into royalty, but a baby born into poverty. His parents were homeless, immigrants on the run from a cruel dictator, and yet this child was God. God coming into our world, or as one translation puts it, he moved into the neighborhood. I like that. And in writing about 700 years before the birth of Jesus, the prophet Isaiah describes the coming king. And I'd like for us to read this together, okay? Let's read this passage together. It's on the screen. Here we go. For to us a child is born, to us a son is given, and the government will be on his shoulders. And he will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. And so each week in this series, we're gonna take a look at one of these names and what it tells us about who Jesus is and how that particular name can bring tremendous significance, maybe even wonder into our lives this Christmas. And so today we look at Jesus, Wonderful Counselor. Wonderful Counselor. You know, every time I taught about this name in the past, this name, Wonderful Counselor, I would always focus on the counselor part. And I would often talk about how fortunate we are that we have access to the most knowledgeable and relationally savvy counselor in the universe, in God, right? With a counselor that makes Dr. Phil seem like a lightweight. And while all that is true, today we're gonna focus more on the wonderful part. The wonderful part. I mean, what does it mean, you know, that Jesus is wonderful? Well, I did a little digging, we did as a team, and the Hebrew word translated for wonderful in Isaiah chapter 9 is the word Pele, all right? Say that after me, Pele. Right, Pele, very good. And even though in English, okay, if you look at that wonderful counselor, it comes across as an adjective describing counselor. Wonderful in Hebrew is actually a noun. Yeah, it's actually a noun. So it's not just that Jesus is a wonderful counselor, rather Jesus is a wonder. And this word for wonder, Pele, means Jesus is extraordinary. You know, hard to be understood, astounding in such a way that it causes a feeling of intense amazement. That's who Jesus is. Now, when I first learned that the word wonder in the Hebrew is the word Pele, you know what I did? I immediately thought of what? You're probably ahead of me. Yeah, exactly. I thought of the great Brazilian soccer player, Pele. Maybe you've seen this photo before. I mean, I found out, though, that his real name is actually Edson. His father was fascinated with Thomas Edison, named him Edson. Pele was his nickname. But then I thought, oh, well, then he must have been given this nickname because of how he performed on the soccer field. He caused people to wonder, right? I hate it when it doesn't work out the way you want it to. As far as I could tell, it had nothing to do with that. But if it helps you remember the Hebrew word for wonder, just think about Pele and the wonders he could perform on the soccer field. But what I want you to get today is that Isaiah isn't merely saying the Messiah is wonderful. He is saying that this child who was born to us, the Messiah, Jesus, is a wonder. He's a wonder. Dr. Neil Burton defined wonder in the following way. I like this. He said, wonder is a complex emotion involving elements of surprise, curiosity, contemplation, and joy. It is perhaps best defined as a heightened state of consciousness and emotion brought about by something singularly beautiful, rare, or unexpected. You see, wonder is different than curiosity. Knowledge can extinguish curiosity. Familiarity quenches surprise. Wonder, however, seems to grow and deepen the more fully we seek to know and understand. See, true wonder actually has some depth to it. It creates in us an attitude of humility as we are overwhelmed by a sense of greatness. I'll tell you what, let's try this out, okay? Imagine that today, all right, that instead of being where you are right now, that you were up in the space shuttle, okay? Can you go there with me? You're in the space shuttle right now, right? And you're cruising along in outer space, and you get your hand on the steering wheel like this, and you're just kind of going along. They have one of those, don't they? No, not a steering wheel? Anyway, let's pretend that they do. You're a couple thousand miles above the Earth's surface, right? And you're going along at a rapid speed. Now, you know what Earth looks like, right? I mean, you've seen plenty of pictures. Maybe you've seen this picture here before. You've spun a globe around a time or two, right? You know the geography of the Earth, how it spins on an axis. All right, but if you were in the space shuttle, okay, and you had the chance to look back at Earth through a window, do you think you would say, no, I don't need to look at it. I already know what it looks like? Of course not. I mean, you would gaze out that window. You would just be amazed and startled and overwhelmed and be filled with wonder at what you were looking at. Do you remember the first time as a kid that you looked at something under a microscope? Do you remember that? Yeah, I mean, maybe it was in science class. And it really didn't matter. It might have been something as familiar as like a housefly or even a leaf from a tree. But I mean, you were just blown away with wonder because of all that you could suddenly see that you couldn't see before. And see, I think in these moments we experience something deeper than curiosity or surprise. I think we feel awe, we feel amazement, we feel wonder. And you see, 2,000 years ago, man, wonder broke into our world, and they called him Jesus. And the truth is, everything about Jesus led people to wonder. Everything about him was unique and distinctive and amazing. Everywhere he went, I mean, he dropped the mic and the crowds dropped their jaws. You know, his words invoked wonder. One of Jesus's most famous talks is considered to be the greatest sermon ever preached. Do you know why? Because it is. I mean, in that section of scripture, Matthew 5, 6, and 7, where this talk is, Jesus covers so many facets of the human condition. He covers anger, marriage, forgiveness. He talks about loving our enemies, giving to those in need, prayer, anxiety, judgment, wisdom. And in each case, what he does is he takes conventional wisdom and he turns it on its head. I mean, his words are absolutely incredible and revolutionary. And when he finished his sermon, those who were standing listening to his word were absolutely amazed. I mean, Jesus taught this. He said, you have heard it said, love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I tell you, no, you love your enemies and you pray for those who persecute you. Jesus said, blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. He said, your kingdom come, God, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. Do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about itself. And why do you look at the speck of dust in your brother's eye and pay no attention to the plank in your own eye? Incredible. And here we are, over 2,000 years later, and his words continue to fill us with wonder. And those who actually take the time to read and reflect on his words are still blown away. I mean, his teachings have endured hundreds of years of scrutiny. They've been translated into over 1,400 languages, and they have crossed almost every cultural and ethnic barrier known to man, because the words of Jesus are full of wonder. But it doesn't even stop there. You know, Jesus' actions also lead us to wonder. Let me just read through the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, the first 4 books in the New Testament. And everywhere you'll turn, you'll find Jesus doing something incredible and unexpected. His friend Matthew describes one of these times. You can follow along. Jesus left there and went along the Sea of Galilee. Then he went up on a mountainside and sat down. Great crowds came to him, bringing the lame, the blind, the crippled, the mute, and many others, and laid them at his feet, and he healed them. The people were amazed when they saw the mute speaking, the crippled made well, the lame walking, and the blind seeing, and they praised the God of Israel. They praised Jesus. I mean, the people were amazed. But can you imagine what it must have been like to stand or sit up on that hill there with Jesus? I mean, watching a man who has never taken a step before, for the first time, take steps, maybe even run. Can you imagine the joy of a woman who has never seen, open our eyes and see the beauty of creation for the very first time? I mean, what was it like for someone who had never heard the voice of a human being ever before, for the first time, have their ears opened up to hear the tones of voice of someone, hearing that in their ears for the very first time? What was that like? It's almost hard to imagine, isn't it? I don't know, maybe this will help. It's a video of several people who actually hear for the first time. You may have seen something like this on YouTube. Take a look.
Okay. Okay, say hi.
Hi.
Hi, Cooper. Hi, Cooper.
Hi, Cooper. Okay, what do you think? How does
Hi,
it sound when
baby.
put together? Sounds good. Oh, tissues.
Hi, Grayson. Talk to him, Daddy.
Daddy loves you. Daddy loves you. Daddy.
Yes, here. There you go.
It's beeping. So now technically your device is on. Can you tell? Oh, that's exciting.
You know, that video kind of gets me every time. And there's something so beautiful, so powerful, so truly wonderful about seeing someone healed like that. Now imagine being with Jesus and seeing this happen again and again and again. But you know what? He still brings physical healing. But he also brings healing to our hearts, our relationships, our disappointments, our failures. See, the wonder of Jesus is that he brings wholeness to the most painful and broken parts of our lives. He is wonderful. But maybe the most wonderful thing about Jesus is the very thing that we celebrate at Christmas time, and that's his birth. At Christmas, we celebrate the wonder that God came to us himself, that he is truly God with us. Alistair McGrath reminds us, he said, God did not send a subordinate to redeem us. No, he chose to do it himself. I recently came across a story about a gift that Billy Joel, the singer, gave to his daughter on her 12th birthday. She was in New York City. Billy Joel was in Los Angeles touring. And so he called her in the morning to apologize that he wasn't going to be there for her birthday, but he told her to expect the delivery of a large package before the end of the day. Well, later that evening, the doorbell rang and his daughter opened the door to find a 7-foot-tall, brightly wrapped package. And as she tore open the package, you guessed it, out stepped her father, fresh off the airplane from Los Angeles. You see, folks, Jesus' birth means the creator of the universe, the one through whom all things were made, the one who is wonderful, loves us so much that he showed up on our doorstep. He came to be with us. And though few could have understood what was actually happening, those who encountered the child in the manger knew they were experiencing something breathtaking and awe-inspiring. The shepherds rushed to the manger, and when they heard the news, they were so overcome with joy, they spread the news, and all who heard it were absolutely amazed. Jesus is a wonder, and the wonder of Christmas was never meant to remain in the past. No, Jesus wants to just break into your world with wonder on this very day. And don't you just isn't there a part of you that just longs to experience that? Do you feel that? Do you want that? I mean, wouldn't you like to kind of just be blown away by the wonder of his presence this Christmas? I'll tell you what, who here saw the eclipse last August? Do you remember the eclipse? Okay, just a few months back. Yeah, a lot of you did. I was in New York and I was dropping my daughter off to start college, her first semester. And I was so hurried and stressed out for making all the plans for her to start off school that I had no idea the eclipse was occurring. I knew nothing about it. I was just basically stressed from all the arrangements we had to make to get her started for school. I wasn't aware of something that we won't even be able to experience for another 7 years. Well, fortunately, that afternoon, I ran into another dad who I knew from Chicago, whose son was also starting at the same school. And he stops me literally in the hallway and says, "You've got to see this. This is incredible." And then he hands me a pair of those glasses, that they had, those paper glasses that you could put on that would help you see it much more clearly. You know what I'm talking about? Well, I reluctantly put them on. I kind of walked outside. I was still kind of poo-pooing the whole thing. And I looked up, and I was really taken away. It was incredible. I didn't want to walk away. And as I watched the moon's shadow, slowly cover the sun, I felt that growing sense of awe and wonder. There was an author, Margaret Feinberg, and she wrote about the wonder she and others felt from the eclipse. I love how she put it. She said, temperature dropped, darkness descended. Or she said, temperature plummeted, darkness descended, jaws dropped. Yesterday, we stood in holy awe of a heavenly display wrapped by celestial power and beauty. A black fireball compelled strangers to erupt in wild applause at the airport. People who didn't know one another were sharing sunscreen, snacks, and conversing. Wonder drew people together and encouraged unity. It made me ask, what if you could continue the awe and wonder of the eclipse every single day? And see, I think it can. I think it can. because of something much, much more profound, much more awe-inspiring, much more wonderful than the eclipse. You see, the words and the action and the life and birth of Jesus still has the power to strike us with an ongoing sense of awe and wonder when we allow ourselves, I believe, to be captivated by him. Because the truth is, God is still with us, living by his Spirit in the heart of every single Christ follower. He is still speaking, he is still doing miracles, and he is still with us and always will be wonderful. Do you remember back in the heyday of the Michael Jordan era with the Chicago Bulls? Yeah, you know, when the Bulls were a professional basketball team? Okay, I thought that would help you a little bit. Yeah, I mean, back then, it's hard to believe now, everybody wanted to go to a Bulls game. Why? Because there's this sense of anticipation that you were guaranteed to see something incredible, right? Gravity-defying dunks, unstoppable drives, remarkable plays, and we watched with tremendous anticipation. Do you remember that? I want you to approach this Christmas with that same kind of anticipation. I mean, consider this an invitation this Christmas to be wide-eyed with wonder because the Savior who is born. I mean, just let this Christmas reawaken in you a childlike faith that expects something amazing to happen. In fact, the only challenge I want to give you today is a simple one. It's every day, if you would, when you wake up in the morning between now and Christmas, say a simple prayer. And this is it. Jesus, I'm ready to see your wonder. Would you do that? Would you, every day between now and Christmas, when you wake up in the morning, just before your feet hit the floor, before you look at your smartphone, just pray that prayer. Jesus, I'm ready to see your wonder. Can I get a nod of the head? Are you with me? Will you do that? Yeah, let's do that. Jesus, I'm ready to see your wonder. Because I think if we open our heart and our eyes to the God who is with us, we will see that he still works miracles in our midst. And we just need to look for him in our weekdays and in our weekends, in our meeting-filled Mondays and in our lazy Saturdays. Search for him in the snowy sunsets, if you will, and in the hearty laughter. Just pray for and expect wonder. For when you search for him, he promises you will find him and you will see him and you will experience the wonder of Jesus. For to us a child is born, for to us a son is given, and the government will be upon his shoulders, and they will call him Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. See, the truth is the wonder of Jesus is all around us. If we would only have the eyes to see it, to experience it, to take in the wonder of who he is. Jesus, I'm ready to see your wonder. Let's pray. Lord Jesus, Father God, we're ready to see your wonder. We're ready to see your wonder. Thank you for the wonder that we can see in your words and your teaching. Thank you for the wonder that we can see in what you've done and what you do and what you still do. Thank you for the wonder that we can see as we look to your birth and the fact that you are Emmanuel, God with us, that you're present in the life of every person who follows you. God, I pray that somehow this Christmas you would reawaken in us a childlike faith that expects something amazing to happen because something amazing has happened. Help us to be wide-eyed with wonder. God, help us to get lost in the wonder of Jesus' birth. Help us to get lost in the wonder of his life and the wonder of his death and the wonder of his resurrection and the wonder of his love. For greater love has no man than this, that he laid down his life for his friends. We're ready to see your wonder. Amen.